aka Books and Bevies, here on Instagram. And I am here with Bakrate to talk about Angel's Blood. It is the first book in the Guild Hunter series. If you don't know, the Guild Hunter series is by NALINI SINGH. It is an absolutely epic paranormal romance series about angels and vampires and humans and all sorts of super sexiness. So go ahead, grab your wine, grab your tea, grab your hot cocoa, grab your vodka on the rocks, grab your shot of tequila, whatever you need to chill out, relax, and let's talk some Guild Hunters. So this week we are talking about chapters 1 through 13 in the book, which is super fun because it starts with Elena chasing a vampire and ends with a vampire chasing Elena. So Elena Devereux is our heroine. She is a vampire hunter. In this series, they call them guild hunters. It is a job. She is essentially a bounty hunter for hire. So she wears black leather pants and uses this fancy collar to collar vampires and is an all-around badass lady, right? So Elena is a vampire hunter. She's a total hottie. Apparently her family calls her an abomination and doesn't talk to her, especially her dad. She is all about her friends. Her friends Ashwini and Sarah and Ransom all come up in these first 13 chapters. And at least Sarah and she have amazing interactions and are so clearly close. And it's fantastic to see that kind of friendship on the page. But on top of that, you see Ransom and Elena, who are totally platonic male-female friends. And that is so awesome to see. Like, I love it. She's a guild hunter. She is fiercely independent. She doesn't take shit from anybody. She kicks ass, takes names, and goes and calls it like she sees it. She is who I want to be when I grow up. Like, I dyed my hair because I read this series and fell in love. I'm not even kidding. Like, she's amazing. So the hero of the story is Raphael. Raphael is an archangel. And really, I feel like that's all you need to say about him is he's an archangel. So in the hierarchy of this world, it's like our world. The countries are the same. It's not like an alternate universe. But instead of how the world is, archangels kind of rule the paranormal society, and it's totally part of our world, right? It's like out in the open. So Raphael is an archangel, which is like one of the head honchos. There's 10 of them in the world, head honchos of the angel kind. The angels make the vampires and therefore control the vampires. Without the angels, the vampires succumb to bloodlust, which means they kill people right and left willy-nilly like crazy. They mention this one vampire in particular, Slater Patalis, who was a serial killer and somehow seems to be connected to Elena. But he was a serial killer who killed a ton of people before he was finally caught and was a really bad mamma jamma. So that is why the angels are almost excessively, in our human terms, harsh on vampires when they punish them. So Elena catches them and turns them in, and then they get crazy punishments like leg amputations that then have to grow back because vampires can regenerate limbs and they don't die. It just really hurts and is a really crappy punishment. So it's a really harsh world, but it's a really cool world because there's this whole like paranormal sect, right? And angels making vampires is something I have never read before, and that's really cool. Like, there's this whole waiting list, and you have to be compatible to become a vampire, and you know, it takes years for you to potentially get it, and then you have to serve 100-year contract. So if you want to be a vampire, like, you have got to want it and work for it, and then you've got to work for it some more once you become one. And after your 100 years, you should be old enough to be free and not serve. Well, you'll have to be like under an angel's guidance, but not like in a contract like that. So all of that is going on. Raphael decides to hire Elena, and Elena has no clue why. The guild has no clue why, which is really weird because typically when you get put on a contract, your boss knows what you're doing. Her boss doesn't know. She can't tell her boss. Her boss also happens to be her best friend, and she can't share any of that information. So it's kind of crazy. What Raphael wants her to do is to help him track an archangel. He picked Elena because Elena is the best. Elena's an expert vampire tracker, in part because she's hunter-born, which means she has heightened senses and she can smell vampires, and hers are especially heightened. So she can smell and track vampires with alarming accuracy. As young as under a year old, which is very, very rare. So she's really, really good at her job, but she can't track angels. So it's kind of odd that he wants her to track an archangel, and she really doesn't understand why, but she can't ask because he won't answer. And when she pushes him too far, he does something like take control of her mind and make her hold onto a knife until she bleeds. So she can't really push him too far, but she definitely continually pushes him because she does not take his crap lightly. So Raphael does stuff like show up unannounced at her apartment, and Elena tells him he is not coming in. So then Raphael, being an archangel and used to getting anything he wants, just tells her that she's coming with him and he's flying her wherever they go, and flies her off into the night. Okay. Right? On one hand, it's a little bit controlling and domineering. On the other hand, he's sweet enough to take her down far enough that she's not freezing in the air and she can just enjoy her flight. And then he does something like mention her mother and absolutely ruins the moment, and she's absolutely miserable and fighting him, and it's awful. Well, on top of all of this plot and dynamic hunting down an archangel, we have this intense sexual tension between Raphael and Elena. And you guys, it is so hot. At one point, she is teasing him about how she's going to try to sleep with Dimitri, who is one of his vampires, because they're hanging out and so Dimitri has a scent that's basically sex. He just exudes sex. And Elena is so easily succumbed to it because of her heightened hunter senses that anytime she's near him and he decides to let that pheromone loose, she's a goner. So she tells Raphael that she's going to sleep with Dimitri, and he's like, okay, but then comes on super strong and mentions splaying her on his desk and fingering her. So he may play it cool, but he's totally not cool. Later on, he talks to Dimitri and tells Dimitri in no uncertain terms, Elena is his. So they have this really hot chemistry. Well, all of this is going on. Raphael decides that it's a brilliant idea to send a woman that he's sexually interested in a diamond rose the size of your palm. Because that's obviously what one does when one courts, right? Wrong. And Elena's absolutely not. Takes it back to him, gives it back. They have these conversations, a little bit of fighting, and next thing you know, they are lips locked, going at it. It is hot. They are all over one another, and you're flipping those pages okay, come on, I need the good stuff. And then Elena realizes she's not in control of her actions, and Raphael is doing his mind control shit. So she calls him on how he's essentially raping her. And then he's really upset because that's not who he is. And he does not want to be that guy. So he lets her beat him up a little bit, lets her run away, sends Dimitri after her to make sure she's okay and doesn't hurt herself because she's clearly really upset for good reason. And he goes and locks himself in a dark room and does some archangel magic and calls another archangel for advice. She gives some crappy advice and tells him to kill Elena because she's going to turn him mortal. it's really bad advice, but Lawan seems to think it's good advice. Meanwhile, Elena and Dimitri are like running through the streets of New York. So Dimitri follows her out, tells her he's supposed to follow her, and she's like, no, absolutely not. He pulls some of his sexy sense sex games on her because he thinks she's free game. She slices his throat. And then they have this high-speed epic chase through New York City. She gets picked up on her friend Ransom's motorcycle. He takes her back to the guild, and she has to go hide out in their cellar, which is like their safe house. And that's the end of the first 13 chapters. So it is really, really good, you guys. It is fast-paced. It is chock full of sexual tension. And it is so, so gripping with their story. I have trouble naming a favorite part, but I really like the relationships in the book. Not just Raphael and Elena, but like Raphael and Dimitri, and then Elena and Sarah, and Elena and Ransom. I love seeing all of the different pieces that NALINI has working in this. I think they're really cool and really pivotal. Especially having read the whole series, they're really pivotal. But like just reading as a book, everything is given such weight, and it's really awesome to see so much detail in the first book of a series. So in the comments, let me know what your favorite part of these first 13 chapters were. Don't forget to post about the read along. Use the hashtag BayHunters. Tell us what you're thinking. Show us where you're reading, all of that fun stuff. And I will talk to you guys about the next part next week. You guys have a great day. Bye.